Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me today for People Import Training. My name is Jennifer Ranella. I'm a customer onboarding manager here at Validity. Please know that everybody is in listen only mode. So we'll be communicating today through that Q&A box in the Zoom panel. Please, if you can, use the Q&A box and not the chat. The Q&A allows me to see what I have and have not answered so I can keep track of it a little more easily. Please feel free to ask questions at any point in time during our training today. All questions are welcome. We will not be covering logging into PeopleImport today. Hopefully you understand that you're logging into Salesforce with your username and password. If you have specific questions on logging in, I'm happy to answer those. We're going to go over some basics first about resources that are accessible for you, our customers, and then we'll dive into PeopleImport. Just a quick note on PeopleImport. It is very robust. Obviously, we have 2 hours for this training. It's probably not going to take us that long depending upon how many questions we get, but there's a lot of information here. Okay, so there's going to be a lot to absorb. So please, if you do have questions, make sure that you ask them as they come up. If it happened previously, I'm still happy to answer them. And if they're happening in the future, I'll just let you know that. So make sure that you ask your questions as we're moving through this so that you really understand all of the different pieces of this great tool. All right, some basics. The version for PeopleImport is located at the top left of the screen. If there is an upgrade available, there will be a banner under here that will advise you of that. User information and time left to renew is at the top right. At the bottom of the screen, in that gray bar, you're going to see where you're logged into. You can see I'm in Hotshot Tools, right? It'll even give you my API and my org ID here. This just allows me to know that I'm in a place I mean to be. So if I wanted to be in my production org, I'm obviously not there, okay? It's just a good reference point. These 3 tiles in the middle of the Today page are where you're going to find all of your information and resources. If you ever need to get back to this page, you just click on PeopleImport Today at the top left corner here. All right, let's start with the tech support tile. This tile allows you to log a case with our technical support team. The more information you enter, the better. Additionally, you can email support@validity.com. This second tile, live training. This is more than likely how you got to me today, but if somebody happened to register for you, this is a training calendar for all of our tools and modules. So if you wanted to take lead conversion in demand tools, it'll tell you what this course is about, allow you to register to the bottom left. You're also going to see a link to a pre-recorded public training, okay? All of these courses are available on demand and they are in our community, and I'm going to show you where that's at next. So the next tile and the last tile is self-help. You're going to notice you have a link to the online help system. Okay, that's going to take you out to a browser. You'll notice over to the left, you've got guides for release notes, getting started, best practices, and then stage-by-stage instructions. The community. The community has access to all of this information we just talked about in one place. You do need to be a user on here, so you're going to need to register. I'm clicking on this to kind of show you this. So if you were to click on one of those on-demand recordings and you're not a registered user in the community or you haven't logged in yet, you're going to be prompted to log in here. If you're not a member yet, simply click on not a member, fill out the information, and sign up. The community is a customer-only community, so please put your valid company information in there. And let me just log in real quick and we'll take a look at what we can see in our community. Sorry, I was typing and my brain was not speaking. Okay. So when we get to the landing page for our community, you're going to notice over here to the right that you can ask a question. You have access to all the help docs for all of our tools over here to the right. You can log a case and view the live training calendar. The products will be listed in the middle of the page here. The discussions tab will include anything currently that's being discussed. My feed will be anything that I've asked or answered or anything. And so of course, your feed would be your feed. Anything that you've been involved with. At the top of the screen, you're going to see training resources. Okay. All of our public trainings that are available on demand will end with the word training. Okay. You'll notice PeopleImport is down here at the bottom. Anything that says tutorial is shorter in nature, so less than 10 minutes. These are kind of quick wins. You know, how do I quickly insert records? What are field roles? Okay. Additionally, we have overviews for all of our tools, the product suite, the onboarding overview, which basically just covers what we just looked at, where you can find resources. And the demand tools module functionality overview is a little bit deeper dive into what each of the modules do in that tool. We also offer certifications on our products, so you'll see that at the top of the screen. So if you want to be certified in Demand Tools, PeopleImport, or DukeBlocker, or all three, you can check that out. All right, so PeopleImport. PeopleImport is geared towards taking a external spreadsheet of person data, right? It has to be people data, comparing it to our existing contacts and or leads in Salesforce, right? And then updating what we find and inserting what we don't find. Now we can absolutely customize what fields we want to update and what we want to insert, whether it be a lead or a contact. Okay, but please remember it's specifically designed for people data. Another nice thing is that we can create tasks at the same time and add people to campaigns. So we can do all across all of those objects, right? So accounts, contacts, leads, campaigns, tasks in one tool. Let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet I'll be using today. It's a pretty basic spreadsheet. First name, last name, title, street, city, state, post, country, phone, fax, email. I've got a description that I've added for today. You'll notice I do have campaign ID and campaign status. They're not filled in, but we'll kind of walk through why I've got those in here. I also have an owner ID indicated. Okay. You also notice that my data is a little bit all over the place. I would suggest that you cleanse your data before you import. I'm going to import it just like this, but when I do, it's going to appear how I've got it in my spreadsheet. Okay, so if it's in all caps, it's going in all caps. So obviously I should probably spend a little time beforehand prepping my data source here to make sure that everything is standard, right? So if I want everything proper cased, I should do that. If South Carolina should be spelled out, I should make sure they're all the same, so on and so forth. Okay, all right, that's my spreadsheet. So let's go ahead and jump into stage one. Stage one is where we load our file and we map our fields. Okay, so the very first step is to load our file. So at the top right, I'm going to select a file, and it's stuck. This never fails. If you've been on any of my recent trainings, every time I try to try to do this when I first start, it gets stuck on me. Only because it's a public training, so it's trying to mess me up here. We'll just get going right again. Okay, so again, top right, select file. Okay, I'm just gonna navigate out to where my file is stored. You'll notice this is the same file, but one is a CSV and one is an Excel worksheet. So we're gonna load the CSV first. Okay, you'll notice it automatically loaded. I know it's loaded because up here in the top left, I can see 35 records loaded in red. Additionally, the column headers from my spreadsheet that's called November PI list, those are loaded here and here. Okay, let's select a file and load that Excel worksheet. You'll notice this doesn't look the same, right? It's not loaded. That's because there can be multiple worksheets in an Excel file, right? So if you're using a file type where there are multiple worksheets available, you do have to do one more step. So I need to select the worksheet I want to use up here. I just click on it. And then over here to the right, I select use, or I simply double click that worksheet. Okay, just remember you'll know it's loaded because you'll see that 35 records loaded. And of course, the date on the bottom is populated as well. All right, the next thing that we need to do is select what we want to compare to. Okay, so if I want to compare my spreadsheet data to both contacts and leads, that's what we have selected now is leads and contacts. If I decide I only want to compare them to leads, I would just select the radio dial for leads. You'll notice the right side gets grayed out. Those are contact fields. Vice versa, contacts, leads get grayed out. We're going to select leads and contacts for today's demonstration, but just remember that's how you decide which objects to compare to. Hi, Julie. Julie's getting a delay. Is anybody else getting a delay here? There isn't really much I can do about it. I can sit on this for a minute. It seems that her audio is a little bit ahead, which makes sense. Sometimes this is slowed down a bit. Let me see if I can't close the other one here. Maybe that'll help. It's still stuck. Is anybody else experiencing what Julie's experiencing? No, not barking. Could be a internet connection or Zoom slowing you down, Julie. Um, sometimes closing additional things will free up some memory on your PC and allow that delay to not happen. All right, so as we're working through this, after we select to compare to both leads and contacts, the next thing we need to do is to map our fields, right? So we need to tell it which fields from my spreadsheet correspond to which fields in each object. We're going to start over here with the lead. The lead are these orange fields. It also shows it up here at the top, right? Lead with the little dancing man. These are all my lead fields in Salesforce. Yours, of course, will look a little bit different. Please remember that you're looking at the API name of the field. So if you have custom fields, those are the ones that end in that _C, and their API name is vastly different than what it looks like in Salesforce, they're going to be alphabetized by that API name, right? So maybe the field in Salesforce is called campaign field Ken, but the API name is different. It says Ken's campaign field, right? That can be a little bit confusing as you get started. The easiest way around that, or to identify that, I should say, is to go into setup in Salesforce, look at the fields on whatever object you're looking for it, and find the API name for that field. The easiest way to map fields is to go up here to the top right and select Auto Map. When I do that, they automatically map. Now I know they're mapped because I see the flags on the left-hand side of the screen. That means those are the fields that are mapped. You'll notice that campaign ID didn't map over here. That's because that field isn't located on our lead. If the field names are vastly different, right, from your spreadsheet to Salesforce, they simply won't map, and you'll have to do that manually. It's a fairly simple process. So let's say the mailing city didn't map. Okay, let's start vice versa. Let's say this field mapped improperly as I'm looking at it. To remove it, I'm going to right click and select remove. Okay, if we notice that a field didn't get mapped, we can manually map by grabbing it and dragging it. So I grabbed with the left mouse click, dragged it, and dropped it. Okay, so right click to remove, grab and drag to map. Okay, and I usually like to scroll through this a bit and see if everything mapped properly. Like this company field, it mapped twice to our custom company field, and I don't want it to, so I'm going to remove that. Okay, mailing country looks good, description, email, fax, first name, last name. I don't want this owner ID to map. Okay, maybe they're, either I didn't have the right information. Now you'll notice it says owner ID, right? I could not push in the value of Jennifer Ranella in here. Okay, I need to put in my user ID. Now here's a note. It will work, but if for some reason I have several Jennifer Ranellas as user IDs, it could potentially give it to the wrong person. It'll just give it to the first one it finds. Now we have had people in the past who have said, oh, well, it's always worked in the past. That's just happenstance, right? Like it just happened to correctly grab the right one. That doesn't mean that the next time it won't grab the wrong one. So your best bet and the best thing to do is to actually use the unique user ID. Okay. I'm also going to remove the status field because that's a campaign status, not a lead status field. Okay. All right. So once they're mapped, now if we look under each of these fields, we're going to notice these boxes underneath, right? And these boxes indicate what's going to happen if it's updating a record or if it's inserting. They're a little bit hypothetical, right? Because it's not going to update and insert. It's going to do one or the other. So we need to tell it field by field what we'd like to happen. Okay. We can see for the mailing city field that insert is checked. That means, okay, if I need to insert a lead, insert the mailing city field. Okay. So check means yes, insert the field. Okay. If you uncheck it, it means don't insert it. Okay. The three in the middle are your update options. So we have do not update, update, or update only if blank. Okay, that's exactly what it sounds like. So if I find a record, a lead that's matched to my data in my spreadsheet, I want to only update the mailing city field for my spreadsheet if that field is blank in Salesforce. Right? Do not update means don't update for my spreadsheet, and update means always overwrite what is in Salesforce with what's in my spreadsheet. Okay? Really important that you go through these and determine what you want to happen for every field. Now, you'll notice here as I'm scrolling through, all of mine say insert, update only if blank, show, and grid. And that's because I have those auto map options set. Okay, so if we look down at the bottom left of the screen in the options menu for PeopleImport, over here to the left, you'll notice that that's what I have selected for my lead fields and my contact mapping defaults. So when I click auto map, that's the default selection it will make for me. If you want yours to be different, you would just change them here. There's an additional option that you'll see on some fields. You'll notice that the description field also has a merge option. That's because this is a mergeable field. It's a long text field. So standard 255 character text and long text can be merged. This means that if I select merge here, it will append whatever's in my description in the spreadsheet to this field. So it won't overwrite the field. Okay. All right, so once you have that set, we're going to navigate over here to our contacts. We're going to do the same thing. We're just going to take a look at them. Description, we're going to merge that one. I'm going to remove that owner ID field again. Do you notice that I removed it, but over here there's still a flag? We're going to talk about that in a second because it's still showing as mapped. Okay, phone. We're going to move the status field as well. It's not the right status field. This one too. You'll notice that my fields went from pink to blue, or purple to blue, however you see those colors there. If you happen to be colorblind and these are difficult for you to see, right, the different shades here, just remember that contact fields are always at the top here, and the account fields start with the word account. So even though you can't see the blue, you will see account dot and then the field name. So we know that contacts are linked to accounts in Salesforce, right? Or they should be. We shouldn't just have contacts sitting out there that are not attached to an account. That is not Salesforce best practice. So if we're updating contacts, we're also going to be updating accounts, okay? This is really important, a really, really important thing. This is probably the most common thing that I've seen when people get started with PeopleImport and they make a serious error in judgment or misstep when using PeopleImport. And that is that they update account level fields with the data from their spreadsheet of people, right? And they don't necessarily want to ever touch those accounts, okay? So you want to be very careful that if you don't want to update anything on the account that you select do not update for all of those fields, okay? And if we were to scroll down to the owner ID field for the account, we'll notice that that owner ID was not only mapped to the contact, but to the account level, which is why it's still got the flag on it. So I should remove that, and now my flag is gone. You'll also notice that you can obviously map fields to several places, right? We saw that with the company field mapped several times. If you look here, you're going to see that my mailing fields from my spreadsheet went to the billing fields for the account. I can also map those to the shipping fields, okay? So I could also say mailing street to shipping street, city, state, and it's doing my mapping defaults, right? Insert update only if blank, okay? This is an important note here. When we get to stage 3, we're going to be deciding which fields to match on, right? To determine if records are the same. If we don't map fields here, we can't match on them when we get there. So if I wanted to match the mailing state to the shipping state on the account, but I don't map them, I cannot do that. So make sure that you map all of the fields that you want to match on. Okay? All right. You can save mappings, okay? So just this portion of it. But I just kind of want to point out what's the difference between saving a mapping and saving a scenario. Okay, so when you save a scenario for PeopleImport, you're saving all 5 stages. When the scenario is saved, the mapping is also saved. Okay, but you can also individually just save a mapping. A reason you might want to do this is maybe you run different scenarios or the same scenario for all different types of files, but the mappings are different for the different types of files, right? So you might have, 6 different mappings, but use them in the same scenario. And how that's accomplished is you would load a save scenario first, okay? And then you would load a save mapping that's different, okay? So the mapping is saved in this scenario, okay? But you can have separate mappings if you have different files that have different mappings. Does everybody understand that? If you have questions about that, let me know. That trips people up quite a bit. All right, the last thing that we can do here in stage one is check our data. So we can make a quick check to see if there are any outliers or any data that may be kicked back with an error or something like that from Salesforce. If you hover over that little question mark for check, it'll tell you a little bit about what this does, right? So it's looking for bad data, if you will, right? Does not conform to Salesforce requirements, right? So you can kind of take a look at this, and more information can be found here. We'll take you out to the PeopleImport help docs where this is described in a little bit greater detail, okay, as you look through that, if you'd like to. But we're going to run a quick check on this to see what it returns for us. So if I click check, this little box will pop up. It's showing down at the bottom with 5 records that have errors in them. You'll notice my first error says that this is an invalid email address. You'll notice there's a random space in between this Gansito here. Okay, there cannot be spaces in an email address. I can quickly make this change if I wanted to. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say copy current value. It goes in the change to section. I click here to remove the space, and then I say update value. It'll turn green, say it's fixed by the user, and here's the address it will push in. Now, it didn't go out to my spreadsheet and make any changes for me. Okay, what it did was that spreadsheet has been read into a little temporary database in PeopleImport, and it's made the change there. Okay, I only have 5 errors, so I can go through all 5 and make changes. If for some reason you do check and you see, 420, it's probably a good idea to check and see what we're looking at, right? And then use the spreadsheet functionality to make those changes if possible. Okay, so we're going to go to the next record. I can either click next record or next error. Either way works. This one says error converting value to an integer. Okay, so this is the number of employees. I can't have 200-500. I'd have to have something different, right? So what I can do here is I can just change this. I'm going to change it to the midpoint of 350 and say update. Okay, we're just going to fix 2 errors here. We're going to leave the other 3. I want you to see what will happen if you forget to click check here, which happens a lot. So you can see that there's still a way that we can assess those errors. So I'm going to say, okay, it's going to prompt me and say, hey, you didn't resolve everything, but that's okay. We'll say yes. All right. To save a mapping, which we talked about earlier up here in the top right, just click Save Mapping. We'll call this November Mapping. We'll save it. Okay, clear it off. You can clear it here. Load, load. You'll notice that it's kept everything that I've asked it to, right? So if we look in description, that's now merged. You'll notice that campaign status, owner ID, none of those are mapped. Okay, shipping should be mapped down here. Okay. All right, does anybody have any questions about stage 1? We're going to head over to stage 2. All right, so to get to stage 2, I can either click next in the bottom right-hand corner or click on stage 2 to the left. Carolyn, that's a good question. Carolyn wants to know if there's a pick list misspelled, can this catch this as well? I don't believe it does, Carolyn. I'd have to do a little testing on that. That's a great question. I don't think it's one of the things that it does, but I don't want to give you a hard no because I'd have to test that and see if that was the case. Let me do this, Carolyn. I'll get back to you after our class today, okay? All right, thanks for that great question. We'll head to stage 2 here. All right, stage 2 is where we can set a condition, all right? If you're familiar with demand tools, you're familiar with conditions. If you're not, we're going to go over it today. So we're going to notice that we see compare input data to leads. So leads in the top, contacts in the middle, accounts on the bottom. And you'll notice by default, use all is selected. Use all leads, use all contacts, use all accounts. Okay, and what that means is it's going to compare my spreadsheet data to every single lead, every single contact, and every single account in Salesforce. If I want to subset what it looks at in Salesforce, I can do that here. For instance, my spreadsheet only contains people in the state of South Carolina. So I can save myself a lot of time by using a condition that says, only look at the leads, contacts, and accounts in the state of South Carolina, which is what I'm going to do right now. Now, these are a little bit clumped together. So if you hover over these points in the middle, you can actually drag. So I can drag this down so that I can see a little bit more, and I'll drag up when we get to context, just so we can see things a little bit easier in here. Over here to the right, I'm going to select Use Selected Leads, okay? And then what I'm gonna do is select the field that I'm gonna set a condition on. So for us, it's going to be state. So I'm just gonna type in the letter S, it'll take me down to the S's. I'm gonna select state. You'll notice that we have different operators that we can use. The exclamation equal is not equal to, just in case you didn't know, okay? The operators will change with the type of field. So depending upon if it's a true false, you'll only see equal or not equal, right? If it's a date field, you're gonna see dynamic operators like today, yesterday, last week. Okay. All right, we're gonna say equals South Carolina. Now, I'm gonna put a few iterations of South Carolina, and I'm gonna do that because maybe my data in Salesforce is not completely and totally standardized, right? And I wanna make sure it looks at every single South Carolina lead, okay? So just remember a few things about the value section. The first thing to remember, it is not case sensitive. It doesn't matter how I type it, it will compare all cases to all cases. The comma in between the values, that indicates an or. I'm asking it to look for SC or South Carolina or S period, C period. Third thing to remember, everything after the comma is what it looks for in that field. For instance, if I put comma space South Carolina, it's looking in the state field for a value that starts with a space. So that space is analyzed as a character. So if my state field says South Carolina, right, but there's no space preceding it, it will not analyze that record, okay? I pretty much always say it's a comma with no space. The only time you're gonna put a space there is if you are specifically querying for fields that start with a space, okay? And then we add that condition. All right, you notice those commas turn to pipes. All right, that's what we're gonna use for today's demonstration. I'm gonna show you a little more complex condition so that you can understand how anding and oring works, because you don't need to make just a simple condition here. We can make it a little more robust if we want. So let's say I wanna compare my spreadsheet data to any leads that are owned by Jen in the state of South Carolina, or leads that are owned by Jen in the city of Phoenix. Okay, so we're gonna do that combination anding and oring. So the next field I'm gonna find is the city field. City equals Phoenix, again, not case sensitive. When you have more than one condition applied, they are automatically anded. So this says state of South Carolina and city is Phoenix. There doesn't actually happen to be a Phoenix, South Carolina. We're looking for Arizona. So what we need to do here is create an or situation. So to get an or, we're gonna select this expert mode checkbox in the middle. When I check this box, I want you to pay attention to the right side of the screen here. You'll notice that you receive an or group pop up. If the conditions have the same or group number, like these do, right? They both have 1. They're still anded. So same or group number indicates an and. To get an or, you're simply gonna change that number for one of them. So I'm gonna type 2 and enter. And now I have or group 1 and or group 2. Now we need to get the owner information in there. So we're gonna go back to our fields, find the owner field. I'm gonna select owner name so I get a pick list of users in my org, okay? If I right click in that value section, I can say filter list. I'm gonna type in my last name and say okay, and it'll condense that list for me. I'm gonna select my active user and add that condition. You'll notice that it put it into or group 1 by default, okay? Remember, anded in the same or group number. So or group 1 looks great. It's Jen and South Carolina. Or group 2 still just says city of Phoenix, and we need to say Jen's leads in the city of Phoenix. So I'm gonna add the condition for the owner name a second time. You'll notice again, it put it into OR group 1 by default. I'm going to change one of those to a 2, and now I have my ANDing and ORing combined condition. If you've filtered a pick list, and that filter works for any kind of pick list, and you want to see all values, just right click and say reset. If you take off expert mode, just shows all of them ANDed. To get rid of a condition, you highlight it and select delete on your keyboard. If you happen to be a Mac user that's using a Windows emulating software, you would highlight and select function delete. Does anybody have any questions about conditioning? I'm going to just quickly set that same condition for contacts and accounts. Questions about it would be, if you have them, now's a great time. Okay, doesn't look like we have any questions about conditioning. If you're still typing, please continue to do so. We're going to go ahead and move on to stage 3. So again, bottom right next or left stage 3. All right, so there's going to be a lot happening here in stage 3. Stage 3 is where we tell it how to match our data, right? And we need to match to 3 different objects. Because I'm comparing to leads and contacts, I need to create match steps for leads and contacts and accounts. All right. Over here to the left, the basic structure is going to be set for you: lead, then contact, then account. The most important thing to remember is when we're creating these different ways to match the data, this works like a funnel. So if I create a match step in step 1 for the leads, and there's 35 records in my data set, right, in my spreadsheet. If 5 of those records find a match in step 1, it's only going to look for the next 30 in step 2. If it finds 10 there, the next 20, and so on and so forth. So they're only analyzed in a step if they haven't already been found in a previous step. So you want to make sure that if you want to match to contacts first, that you make that your first match step. So to do that is very simple. You just highlight and over here to the right, click move up. Okay. Account will always be last. It needs to be last, but lead or contact, you can flip the way those are matched to. We're going to do the standard lead, then contact, then account. Okay. All right. What we're going to do here is we're going to create several match steps. Excuse me, sorry about that. Several match steps for each object. And we're going to start rigid. And by rigid, I mean we're going to match on a lot of fields, right? And then we're going to loosen as we go. We're going to be careful about how loose we go. So if for me, the defining characteristic of what a match is the email field, right? That's going to be the loosest step I have, is only a match on email. Now, a lot of people say, why can't I just have one match step, match on the email? What's the big deal? Well, data has to be populated to match. So if records don't have an email address, it won't find a match. But if, you know, John Smith at this street address in this city with this company is the same match, right? You'll never find that if you only match on one field, okay? The exception to this would be if your email address is a required field. Okay, you know that it's always populated and you know your spreadsheet has email addresses for everybody. But again, you could potentially have a non-match if somebody put in their, you know, Hotmail address from, you know, 1992 and in your spreadsheet, they're the actual company address, right? So just think about this. We're going to build it very robust. If you have questions, just let me know as you're going along. All right, so the first thing we're going to do here for lead match 1 is we're going to select add match condition. Okay, and when we click this field to match, we're going to see these relationships. So remember in stage 1 when I said you must map the fields here to match on them? This is why. You wouldn't see the mappings, right, as they're indicated here. So the spreadsheet column headers are on the left and the field names are on the right. So mailing city for my spreadsheet to city. So this is where we're going to tell it which fields to match. So we're matching to the lead. So I'm going to start with the first name. I'm going to add match condition again. This time I'm going to match on the last name. Let's do email. We'll do street, city, state, and company. Okay. So I need to, all of these fields must be populated in the same to return a match. So they're anded here, right? The first name and last name and email and street and city and state and company. All these fields must match from my spreadsheet to Salesforce for it to identify that to be the same record. Okay. Now, obviously, having data match perfectly or exactly, if you will, is not the norm, right? I could be Jen in your spreadsheet, but Jennifer in Salesforce. So we need to use what's called mapping types over here. And you'll see there's a lot of them in order to match data that's slightly different, but still considered the same. If you are familiar with mapping types in DuPlocker or Demand Tools, these work the same way, okay? If you go to the PeopleImport help documentation under stage 3, you're going to see a mapping type document. This is very useful, very, especially as you're getting started, or even in the future when you're trying to say, hey, these are the same record, why didn't they match? What mapping type could I use? Okay, we're gonna go over the common ones today. I don't go over all of them because I think it's really hard to retain all of these at once, but I'm going to go over the most common ones today. And then I highly suggest bookmarking this document so that you can reference this at will. Okay, so for the first name field, I'm going to use the mapping type called first name. Okay, the first name mapping type references a list. That means it's customizable. You can make changes to it, right? Something that better suits your org. Okay, it's also going to be somewhere on the screen so I can get to it. So if you look at the top right corner here, edit nickname list, the nickname list is the first name mapping type. Okay, this is the list it references. Okay, so this is your common items, right? Like Jen is the same as Jennifer, Joe is the same as Joseph. And if you scroll all the way to the bottom of this, and it's a very lengthy list, you're going to see an asterisk down here. Okay, this is where you can add to it. The nickname goes on the left, the full name goes on the right. Okay. There is one limitation to this, and I want you to pay attention to this because a lot of people kind of don't, right, it doesn't compute when you first get going, but you'll notice that I have Sam to Samuel here. The nickname can only be in here once, right? The full name can be in here a lot of times because that's what it's converting it into. So the limitation is this. I couldn't also have Sam to Samantha. Okay. All right. Hi, Marissa. The mapping type document is in the PeopleImport help documentation. There's another way you can get to it too. If you look up here where this green question mark is by the account cleaning list, sorry, I'm going to try and get to it here, where it says account cleaning list, nickname list, that little green question mark. If you click more information can be found here, that'll take you directly to that mapping type doc. Okay. All right. So that's first name. For the last name field, I'm going to have it match exactly, but I'm going to put a fuzzy on top of it. My pleasure, Marissa. All right, so fuzzy. Fuzzy is a phonetic engine. So at a high level, it's going to take out vowels and it's going to analyze consonants. So let me try and explain this. I'm going to high level it, but just so you kind of understand how it decides which records match. Basically, PeopleImport is going to create a key. And if you're familiar with the single table or DuPlocker, same idea. It's creating a key based on how you're matching, right? What field you're matching on and these mapping types. And if the keys match, it determines that's the same record, right? So that's important. So when fuzzy creates the key, it's going to take out vowels and analyze consonants, but it's also phonetic. So it's going to key a CH like an X, right? Let me show you what this would look like. Okay, so I've got the last name field and a fuzzy on it. That's my last name. The key is this, because it's ignoring the I and the E and the A, and it only logs double letters once, okay? This is my colleague's last name, okay? Her key looks like that. Ignores the E and the I. It also ignores plurality, okay? Let's say use fuzzy on a city field, Charleston. Charleston looks like that. So the reason I'm showing you this is because imagine how loose that could be, right? Ranella is fairly distinct, right? It's not Smith. But RNL, there's probably lots of last names that could potentially have RNL, right? They could be vastly different, right? Renolia. I don't think that's a real name, but I just made it up. But something like that, right? Where it's really different, but looks fairly similar based on that key. So the reason I point that out is not to deter you from using fuzzy. I'm obviously going to use it here. Okay, fuzzy is really great for catching spelling errors. I am not worried about it misidentifying a record that's a duplicate. And the reason I'm not is because I'm matching on so many fields. So the potential for it to identify a false positive match is low. But if you're only matching on a couple fields, you want to be a little bit more cautious about using fuzzy. Okay. All right, for email, we're going to do an exact match. I suggest you do that. If you see domain in here or relaxed domain, those are very loose. It's only looking at the domain, right? So if I use domain, it's only going to look at validity.com in my email address. If I use relaxed domain, it's only looking at validity. So it ignores .com, .org, right? All right. For mailing street, I have a couple options here. Okay, I have what's called a street address match. Okay. I also have another one called relaxed. So let's talk about street address. Street address is talking about your directionals and your street designations. So that means that north is the same as N and road is the same as RD, right? Ave is the same as AVE and E is the same as northeast. The reason it's more strict is because the data points have to exist in both places. So if the record in my spreadsheet has a directional, Salesforce has to have one too, right? If Salesforce has a street designation, right, like Boulevard, my spreadsheet has to have a street designation as well. So it's a little more strict, okay? If we were to use relaxed address match, okay, that's looser. Obviously, it's relaxed. So that only compares the street number and the street name. So let's say I have a address that looks like this: 123 Northeast Willow Avenue, Suite 102. Relaxed address match only looks at 123 Willow. It ignores the directional, the street designation, the suite, Ave, floor, apartment. Okay. All right. For mailing city, I'm going to put a fuzzy on top of that. Okay. Again, I'm going to try and catch some spelling errors. For mailing state, I'm going to use what's called the state match. Okay. State match is only or should only be used for US states and Canadian provinces. So SC is the same as South Carolina, BC is the same as British Columbia, so on and so forth. For the company field, my favorite to use here is cleaned account name. Cleaned account name also references a list. There's only two that reference a list. We've used both of them here, first name and cleaned account name. And you'll notice at the top right, nickname is our first name, edit account cleaning list is cleaned account name. Okay, let's take a look at our cleaned account name list. This is a standard list, by the way. If you happen to be a Demand Tools user also, this list is available in Demand Tools. They're separate. Okay, you can copy over the one from Demand Tools and put it in the PeopleImport folder, so you don't have to do it twice, but they are separate. They don't, right, the tools don't pull from the same place. Okay. All right, so we see three tabs here: replace, suffix removal, prefix removal. Okay, now when we see the words replace and remove, we're only talking about that key, right, creating the key. We're not actually changing data in the spreadsheet or data in Salesforce. It's just in terms of creating that key to match records. So as we're looking through the replace tab, we'll notice, hey, if there's a dash, remove it. If there's an ampersand, change it to the word and spelled out. If there's saint, change it to ST. And at the bottom, the asterisk where you can add to this list. You can really help yourself a lot if you flesh this list out to work better with your org. All right, the basic things work just fine, but there's just a few in here. If you really spend a little bit of time or finding things as you're working through different scenarios, this can really help you identify things that are slightly different but still the same in a better, more efficient way for your org. Remember that as you're adding values, the existing value should always be the long version. You see where it says saint? Okay, if you flip those, you're going to be seeing a lot of weird stuff. Right? Maybe my spreadsheet says the fast company. If I flip those, it would change it to the Fasaint company in the key. Okay. All right, suffix removal. It's just going to strip these words. from the right? Co-company, they get stripped from the account name field. Prefix removal strips these from the first word. Okay. I am also going to use transpose and alpha clean with my company field match. Okay. Alpha clean always goes through the field first. Okay. So alpha clean goes through first. It's only going to analyze A to Z, numbers 0 through 9. It's going to ignore all foreign characters and punctuation. You notice I said foreign characters? If you're analyzing data over in Europe or Asia, alpha clean is not your friend. If you're sticking to North America, it is. Okay. Transpose is the opposite. It goes through last. What transpose does is whatever words are left, it alphabetizes them. So I'm going to build what a key would look like if we're using cleaned account name, transpose, and alpha clean. Okay. Let's say my spreadsheet says this. So I'm going to put a random asterisk. Okay. Salesforce says this. Like that. Okay. All right. So we've got cleaned account name, transpose, and alpha clean. Alpha clean will go through the fields first. So this asterisk gets rid of because, right, it's a punctuation. So does the dash, so does the comma. Then the cleaned account name mapping type is going to come through. Okay. In the first record, it removes the prefix of the. There's nothing that happens in the second one. None of those match any parameters on the cleaned account name list. Then transpose comes through and creates an alphabetical word key. The alphabetical word key for the first record, alphabetical word key for the second record, same key, records are now matched. Okay. All right. Remember that all data must be populated to match. So I must have data in these fields in my spreadsheet, and they must be populated in Salesforce. If you select match blank, right, like let's say I select it for company, what that means is the records must be populated and the same, or they're blank in both places. So the company is empty in my spreadsheet, the company is empty in Salesforce. It's not going to identify records where one is populated and the other isn't. So the company is populated in my spreadsheet, but not in Salesforce. No match there. The way you match those records is by no longer matching on the field in a match step. Okay. All right, let's rename this match step. We're going to click rename. We're going to call this lead, rigid, first name, last name, email, street, city, state, company. Okay. We'll notice it renamed it here. Also up here when we're on it. Okay. To add another field to match on, just add match condition. If I click clear mapping, it gets rid of everything I see here. If you just want to remove one field, you just highlight and click delete. I'll show you that in 1 minute. Okay. So let's add another match step and loosen this a bit. The easiest way to do this is over here to the right, click clone step. You'll notice it put it into step 3, and because this works like a funnel, I want this to be step 2. So over here to the right, I'm going to select move up. Okay. So it just cloned everything I did here. So what I can do from here is say, okay, let's loosen this a bit. I can loosen it by removing a field to match on. I can loosen it by changing how the mapping types are. Okay. For today, I'm just going to take off a field. So let's say, let's take off the company. We'll remove that. Okay. Change our match step if we want. Okay. We're going to clone it again, move it up again. All right, let's take off this street. I'm not going to rename it this time. We'll clone it one more time. Move it up. First name, last name, email. Let's take off city this time. Clone it again. State's going away. Clone it again. Let's just do last name and email. For me, that's going to be my loosest step, last name and email. Okay. I could potentially take the fuzzy off the last name if I'm concerned about that being too loose. Okay. So again, first lead step, first, last email, street, city, state, company. Next, first, last email, street, city, state, so on and so forth. 6 lead matching steps. You'll notice at the top left, it allows you to add a lead match contact account. But again, you're kind of starting from, you're starting from scratch here. If you clone things, it's a little bit easier to manipulate. But either way, whatever is easier for you. Okay, to delete an entire step that you no longer need, you'll see delete over here to the right. Remember, clear mapping gets rid of everything that's here. To remove just one of them, I just highlighted and deleted as I move through those steps. All right, contact match. You'll notice we're starting from scratch. And that's because the mappings, right? They're mapped to different fields. So now we're seeing mailing city to mailing city, mailing country to mailing country, right? Because these are now contact fields. I'm just gonna add a bunch of them. We're gonna do the same process. We're not gonna stick here too long. I don't want to, we don't wanna get too bored kind of doing all these different match steps, but I'm gonna do the same process for our contact that I did for our leads. First name, last name, mailing street, city, state. Should see company to account name. There we are. Up and email. Okay, same idea here with our mapping types. Fuzzy on the last name. We're going to do relaxed, I think, for our street. Fuzzy on the city. State match on the state. I'm going to do cleaned account name. Let's choose the right one. Clean account name, transpose alpha clean, and exact on our email. Okay. Rename if you want. I'll show you what this looks like in the grid, whether you want to rename or not. Some people like to. Some don't find it necessary. Okay. All right, and then we'll clone this one. This one puts it in the right order. And let's say street should go away. Clone it again. City. State. Maybe this time it's company. And first name. Okay. Next is account. We're going to do company, street, city, and state. Okay, same thought process, picking our mapping types and how we're matching that data that's slightly different. Clone that again. Take off street. Take off city. Loosest for me is going to be company and state. Okay. All right, if you've got questions about these match steps, now's a great time because we're going to move on to final match. Final match is, hey, what happens if it doesn't identify it? What do I want to insert, right? And we've got 3 options here, okay? We can create a new lead, we can create a new contact, new account, or we can do nothing, all right? So we can create a lead. Now, when it inserts the lead, it's going to insert it in my name, right? Because I'm the one who's logged into PeopleImport here, right? I'm the one who's inserting those records. So if you create a new lead, and you haven't indicated an owner ID in stage 1, it will be in your name. Or you can use a lead assignment rule. If you happen to have a lead assignment rule here, which we do, we can use that here. Okay. New contact, new account. If I want to create a new contact, new account, that can be done here. Now, a really important section when you're creating a new contact, new account is this limit new account duplicates by field. If I select that, it's going to allow me to select which field to match on. The reason you would use this would be because we don't want to create duplicate accounts. So for instance, my spreadsheet contains Jill, Joe, and John, and they all work at the ABC company, okay? If I just create a new contact, new account without choosing limit new, it's going to create 3 new contacts, Jill, Joe, and John, and they will be associated with 3 new accounts, ABC company. Okay. If I select limit new account duplicates by field and say add match condition and tell it which field to match on, which of course is going to be our company, right? We're going to do company, and we could do many fields if we want, but today we'll just do company. Again, we're going to use it just in case maybe my spreadsheet says ABC Co, ABC Company, ABC Inc. So if I use cleaned account name, it'll identify that as the same company. What this does is it'll create 3 new contacts, Jill, Joe, and John, all associated with one ABC company account. Okay. Your last option is to do nothing. Maybe you just want to update records. You don't want to insert anything new. Do nothing will be your step there. We're going to do both of these. We're going to start with create new lead with this lead assignment rule. There's one thing that you will see when we get to the grid, and that's this process. If I tell it to create a new lead, but it identified a matching account in Salesforce, it's not going to create a new lead. It's going to create a new contact on an existing account. There's a way to override this. I will show you it. And I'll also show you, if you saw, when we see in the grid create new contact on an existing account, that's because it found a matching account in one of those match steps. Okay. You also notice underneath each step, you've got these extras, the default campaign and creating tasks, and they're in each step, right? You can see them down here. Okay. So we can assign records to campaigns and create a task for them. The key here is this. These are only step specific. So if a record is found in a lead match 1 and you want it to get assigned a campaign and a task, but that's different than the matches in 3 or the matches in step 8, right? That's the only reason you need to assign them here. Stage 4, the next one we're going to look at, is the global campaign and task creation. So if all of your records should go to the same campaign and have the same tasks, you can just do that in stage 4. Okay, you don't need to do it here. But because these are specifically for these steps, they're more, I'm going to say more important, but they take precedence. Okay, so I can do, if it's just, if it matches in the first step for each object, they go to a different campaign and have a different task, that's okay. And then you can assign a global task and campaign creation for the rest of the records. Okay, so I'm not going to detail how to do that because it looks exactly the same in the next screen. So stage 4, you'll notice our default campaign up here, okay? And if you read it, it will literally detail what I just talked about. Campaign to assign all created and update lead-in or contacts to, if they're not assigned to a campaign during one of the match steps, okay? So if there is a campaign in one of the match steps, that will take precedence over this selection here. Okay, we can assign an object to a campaign and select from our active campaigns, right? So I can give this to Ashley's test with the status of sent. If I have that campaign ID and status in my spreadsheet, which I did have the fields, there's just nothing in them, right? That was just to show you what this looks like. You can select access campaign ID from input data, select the column header for that, so campaign ID, and the column header for your status field, and it will pull from your spreadsheet. So if they're different, right, you have different campaigns and statuses in there, you can select from your spreadsheet. For us, we're just going to assign it to Ashley's test with the status of sent. Great. The next one is default task creation. And again, it'll tell you, create a task for the owner of the created updated lead or contact if none was created during one of the match steps. Okay. We can create a task. We're going to make it completed today. Priority will be normal. Comments will be okay. All right. We can also create an additional task. Now, you can only create 2 tasks per record. Okay, so if you've got one in match step and one here and one here, the one in the match step coincides with this one here, right? So if there's one in the match step, it will be created and this one won't. Okay, but this one is an additional task for the owner of all records imported in this data source. Owner of all records is me, right? I'm the one who did the mass data. So that's what this is talking about. So you can create an additional task for that, just to determine your status, of all that stuff, right? Now at the bottom of the screen, you're going to see the ownership overrides. So if I want the owner for all created tasks to be our marketing person, I can do that. Okay. Additionally, an owner for all tasks where the lead is owned by a queue or a group. So a queue or a group cannot own tasks. So if a queue or a group owns a lead and you have task creation, it will not be created. Okay, it simply doesn't get created because a queue or a group can't own it. So I must indicate here what I want to happen. So maybe I say, okay, if it's that, then I'll just own it so I know. Okay. The owner for all tasks where the contact or lead owner is inactive. Those tasks do get created, but they are owned by you, and you, I mean whoever the user is logged into PeopleImport. Okay. So just remember that those will get created, but you, the user logged into PeopleImport, is the owner. Okay, we're just going to create one task here. We'll do it like that. Does anybody have any questions about campaign and task creation? Hi, Jill would like to know if you can create events or only tasks. Unfortunately, Jill, it is only tasks. That's a really great question. Right now, we only have the ability to create tasks in PeopleImport. Thanks for the question. Let's move on to stage 5. Stage 5 is the grid and where we can view the results. So again, bottom right next or left stage 5. We need to kick off the process. So over here to the right, we're going to click Find Matches. And we're going to notice it's going to scroll through the data. Now it's going to move fairly quickly because I set my conditions to only look in South Carolina. If I hadn't, this process can take a long time. So if you are and it doesn't mean you can't scan your entire database, but if you are, be prepared for a little bit of a lengthy scroll through or look through of all the records. Great. Okay. So we're going to notice we've got the object and the action and the step, the match, the parent account, all that. I like to group my results so I can see them in kind of blocks of what's happening. Okay, you can use this or not. If you like to look at it like this, that's fine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to first sort by the object. So I'm going to grab the object header and drag it to the top. Okay, and then I'm going to sort by the action. So I'm going to grab the action header and drag it to the top. So object and action. So now I've got 4 sections. I've got new contact, existing account. I've got contact update. I've got new lead, and I've got update lead. Okay, now remember my final match said to create a new lead, right? So we see 2 new leads here. If we look up at the top, new contact, existing account. So it did not create a new lead because it found an existing account in my org that it matched to. If I wanted to create a new lead, I can do that manually by clicking on a record. Here's Reynold Phileas. And then I say move to final match, say yes. And now Reynold is down here in the new lead. All right, and maybe Samuel gets moved. Okay, so you do have to do it piece by piece, but you can move them. Okay, so if you say, hey, no, I really want it to be a new lead and not a new contact on that existing account, you can make that happen. If you open up the plus sign next to a record, you're going to see the matching data. So by default, what you're viewing in the grid is the data from your spreadsheet, and you can see that, right? Here's all my crazy unstandardized data. Yeah. And then when you open a plus sign, these are the records that it matched to. So this is the account that it matched to, okay? And the fields that are highlighted are the fields that you matched on in that step. Okay, so step 14, I matched on city, state, name, and that's all city, state, and name. Okay, and if you look to, like, if you're looking at your match steps, I did like this step 7, where I said first name, last name, email, street, right? And maybe even more than that. Let's make it bigger. Street, state, company. Those are all the fields that are highlighted. State, street, name, email, first name, last name, mailing city, and on and on. Okay, Jill would like to know if you have an existing lead and you know the status is closed, not converted, and want to create a new lead, can you move to final match like the contact? You can always move to final match. We do not compare to converted leads, okay? So if the status is, it wouldn't matter. We're never going to look at leads that are converted, okay? Because those are now contacts. I know that Salesforce now lets you look at converted leads, but it's never going to compare to those. By the way, that's built in on the back end. So obviously, if it's not converted, it's still sitting. It will find that, Jill, unless for some reason you set a condition that says don't look at leads where the lead source is closed. Otherwise, it will. Does that make sense? I think I answered that for you, Jill. If I didn't, let me know. Okay. Okay, so you're finding a lot in closed status that aren't converted that you need to reopen. Okay, and that would not be, I mean, well, I guess if you change the field to open, but I don't know that that's really reflective of what PeopleImport would be used for. I would use a different tool for that, Jill. If I was you, I would use Mass Impact or Power Grid if you want to do it a little bit more manually, query based on if it's closed, and then reopen it, right? Give it a new status in a mass way. That's a better use. Okay. All right, everyone. So that's how we see the records that match to. Now, obviously, if it found a lead or contact match, we'll make this a little bit smaller again. That's the match ID, right? So 003, those are my contacts, 0Q, those are my leads. And if they have a corresponding parent account, we can see that here. Now, hopefully in your org, you see account IDs for every single contact. You can see we have a few missing. That's on purpose, right? We want to have a little bit of junk in this demo org. But you should see a parent account for every single contact that it already found. Okay, down at the bottom of the screen, you're going to see what it is telling you, right? It's found 9 leads to update, 4 to insert, 17 contacts to update, 5 to insert, and updating 17 accounts. Now that's based on whatever parameters I set in stage 1 for the field level updates, right? If I said do not update, that's what will happen. All right. Okay, really quickly, let's head to stage 3. And in final match, we'll say create new contact, new account. Okay. We'll go back to stage 5. We'll find matches again. Okay, so again, we have new contact, existing account, new contact, new account, right, instead of the 2 new leads. And then our contact updates. So very similar to what we saw there. Okay. All right. Just wanted to show you what that looked like. We're going to do create new lead because it's, I just like it a bit better. And we'll move a couple of those to the final match again. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and look at the bottom of the screen. Okay, check all is the default. All of them will be checked by default. If the checkbox for use is checked, that means they get processed. Okay. If you've created groupings like this, you can right click on a group header and check the group, uncheck the group, expand or collapse the entire group, right? So if you've grouped, you can do all of these options down at the bottom here to kind of make this a little easier. So expand the group looks like that, right? Collapse it. Uncheck the entire group. Okay. Bottom left, you can say check none. You can decide to just check your updates. Maybe you just want to update records, not insert anything. Again, check none. Maybe you just want to insert records. Check insert and you don't want to update anything. Okay. You can export your data. Formatted XLS looks like the screen. The thing about the exports in PeopleImport is it's just going to export what you see on your screen. It's not going to export these joined, right? The matching records. Okay. That confuses people a little bit, but what you are going to get is the record IDs if you need them. You can use demand tools at this point, find report IDs to pull out that information, but right now the export in PeopleImport is just the data you see on the screen. Okay. You can also save as a data file. You have these kind of file types that you can use. Both types of Excel, Access, DBF, CSV, XML, Tab, and SQL. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and process a few records. So I'm going to process 2 new contact existing accounts, 2 contact updates, 2 new leads, and 2 lead updates. Okay. So at the bottom right here, I'm going to select process checked objects. And then we get this. Remember all the way back in stage 1, a good hour ago, we talked about that check feature. If you forget to click check there, this will pop up, okay? And it'll tell you, hey, we found errors in your input data, okay? So I can do one of 3 things, okay? I can cancel the import. I can say, forget it, I don't wanna import, right? No more processing. I can say, I want to ignore you PeopleImport and just import right now, right? It's not that serious, I'm just gonna import. Or I can check and fix errors, which we're gonna do. We're gonna check and fix our errors and look at these 3 errors that are remaining. Okay, so again, we have this invalid email address. We copy the current value. We take it this random asterisk. We update the value. It's fixed. We go to the next error, extra space, copy, remove, update, next error, copy, extra space right here, update. Oh, it's the ampersand. I always forget. It's also the ampersand. Okay, update. Okay, say okay. And immediately when I click OK, it starts processing. Okay. So if you do click that option where it said import with errors, you can do that. If they're serious enough that would cause a Salesforce to fail the import or update, you'll have errors in your log. Okay. So here are all the files we're going to get. Okay, we have 0 errors, which is great. The log file will contain the detail of what just happened. This is my November 13th log file. The SOQL statements are all of my conditions. Okay, and then it'll show you, here's the PeopleImport process started. First, we're creating leads, lead insert. Then we're inserting accounts. Then we, account inserts, no objects to, right? Tells you, hey, no accounts to insert. Then it's creating contacts. Then it's updating the accounts for the new contacts and existing accounts. Then it's updating leads. Then it's updating contacts. Then it's creating campaigns, right? So on and so forth. So it's telling you step by step in the order in which it does them. If there were errors in here, you'd see them. They'd be in the log. Most errors you've probably seen before. I would say 95% of them come straight from Salesforce. Marissa, it isn't that complex. It's not foolproof, that check option. So when you say it's not actually validating an email address in here, like Bright Verify or other product, it's not doing that where it's, checking for a bounce or anything like that. It's just basically those parameters. Like there can't be an ampersand in an email. There can't be a random space. Things like that are what it looks for. So it isn't, it's not verifying that that's a valid email address. Okay, it's verifying that the data is wrong. Yeah, great question. Okay, so you also see that we have all these other files, right? We're gonna have a lead restore. So that's for my lead update, right? So if I made any updates to leads, I'm gonna have a lead restore file that will help me, will allow me to, let's open very slowly apparently, allow me to push the field level data back to how it was. So you'll notice in here, it's just my spreadsheet data, okay? And what it's doing is just showing me the data as it was before I touched it. So here's my 2 leads, and this was the data before I touched it. You notice the description used to say 6/14/27, okay? Who knows what date that is? It was one of those fill and not copy. Yeah, so that's what that looks like. Okay, you're also gonna have a contact restore file, looks the same, and an account restore. Same thing, it's just gonna give you the data as it was before we touched it in all 3 objects. Same for your account update restore, okay? You're also gonna have a final results file. The final results file looks just like your grid here. Okay, so you notice it looks just like the grid. This is the formatted version, okay? The ones that say true over here on the left for use, these are the ones that we processed. Okay, as you're looking through those, obviously if you've processed your whole file, it'll all be the data, but I'm just gonna highlight these so we can take a look at them. Okay, so it's going to be the spreadsheet data, right? So you're gonna have all of your spreadsheet data here. So column M through the end is my original spreadsheet. And all this other information is things that have been added, right? So this was a contact object, new contact existing account, which match step, okay? The step number. Here is the newly created contact IDs. Here's the existing accounts. You'll notice it says contact inserted, no account update required. Okay. Again, new contact existing account. Here's the owner. Okay. Next, contact update, same idea. Here's the original contact ID and account ID. Contact updated, account updated. Okay. New lead, here's the new lead ID. Lead inserted. Okay. Lead update, same idea, okay? The raw data file is just unformatted. All the same idea, and instead of the fields being at the front, they're at the back, okay? Starting with R, row ID, match key 2, right? All the match steps. I find this a little bit hard to read myself, but some people prefer it, okay? Action, parent ID, owner ID, parent owner ID, match, right? So all this stuff is included. And if they were updated, it'll say, right, no action or updated, things like that. True, false, same as we were looking at before. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at these created. So these ones that are checked have stayed checked, right? So here's my new contact. You can see it added those contact IDs. If we click on one of those IDs, that live link, it'll take me out to Salesforce and we can take a look at this newly created contact, Ed Martinez. Okay, so here is the newly created contact. Okay, where's my, right, created by, here's the description I added. Here's activity history, right? Here's my November's class task. Yay, training, there it is, okay? And then if we scroll down a bit here, we'll see our campaigns, right? Ashley's test 2 sent. Okay. So that was our created contact, right? If we look at an updated contact, we should see the same task and the same campaign since we just did a global campaign creation. We should also see a last modified date and a description change here as well. Here's my last modified date. Here's the appended description. Here's my 11/13/18. I must update this one quite regularly. Okay. And again, we have our November's class here for activity history. And we also see the campaign here, Ashley test 2, 11/13. Okay. So all of that data has been updated. Okay. If I run this scenario a lot and I want to save it because, you know, I don't want to have to build out those match steps all the time, I can save this scenario. So bottom left, I can click Save Scenario. Okay. PeopleImport works differently than Demand Tools. Demand Tools save scenarios directly on your PC. Okay. PeopleImport can save directly on your PC, but it also can save to a server. You'll notice these are all the people who are in my Hotshot org, right? And all of my colleagues here that have created things, you'll see them all in here. So as you're working through this, you can save scenarios. So, you know, if you're working on a team, you can save a scenario to a server and everybody can view them, okay? There is something that you can do extra. In the options menu, you'll notice that I have this show, save, load local scenarios checked. The default is to not have it checked, so you won't see this initially. If you check this, that means that you can also save it locally to your PC. Okay, now I do have mine checked, so when I click Save Scenario, down here I see Save Scenario to Server, and I also see Save Scenario locally to disk. Okay, so I can save this scenario. This is okay. And I can save this locally to disk, which means I'm going to put it here, right? I'll just save it right here in my public training folder. Right, and save it there. Okay, I can also save it to my server. Okay, and then what I can do here is I can click Clear Scenario. Okay, if I go back to stage 1, my file's still loaded. Down here, I can click Load Scenario. Okay, and it's going to show me this server scenario. So if I sort this by last modified date, you can see here's November public training. Or I can click Load Scenario from disk, and there it is, the same one. Okay, so we'll load this one. We're going to notice the mappings, right? Like I said before, all mappings are saved. Okay. We can head right to stage 5 and just click Find Matches. You notice there's only 2 new leads because I processed the other 2, right? Okay, that's PeopleImport. Let's talk a little bit about how you can make these scenarios work for you better. So what I generally do is when I'm starting to create a scenario here, what I'll do is I'll find anything that's new, right? New contact, new lead, and I'm going to take a look for them in Salesforce. So maybe I'm looking for Mary Kay Salzman here, Salzmann. Let's take a look for her in, oh, sorry, let me just, I just want to get out here real quick. All right, so we're just going to search for Salzman. Okay. All right, I see a lead for Mary Kay Salzman and a contact. Okay, so we would want to figure out why they didn't match. We can see this lead is Mary Kay Salzman at CDE Company, right? It says at Gmail. So if we look in PeopleImport at Mary Kay here at the top, she's the top one. We can see that her email is this, Gansito, not Gmail, and she's at the Gansito Lumber Company. Okay, so her email doesn't match and her company doesn't match. So that's not the same person according to my match steps. We also have this contact, Mary Kay Salzman. Okay, we can see her email here is at gmail.com. Is there a company in here? Let's see. Sorry, I always lose it on the page. I don't see it on here. Well, that's not helpful. So as we're looking through, I don't know why I can't. Must have got pulled off my page layout. I apologize. But we're seeing her there, street and city. So again, it's a different person from my spreadsheet, right? My spreadsheet has Gansito, excuse me, and not Gmail, okay? Which is why she didn't find it, because we saw our loosest matched ups. Now, if we think that that is the same person, then what we do is as we're analyzing if they do exist or they don't exist, we can go back to stage 3 and decide what this should be, right? Maybe the last lead matches last name and email. Maybe it should be first name, last name, right? Or first name, last name, company. Maybe email shouldn't play into it. So that's kind of how you look back and forth, and you have to decide that, right? I can't tell you what you should do. Obviously, every org is so different. So you're going to need to analyze how the data is in your org, how it works for you. Is email the end all be all, right? Should it be first name, last name, company? But that's how you're going to, when you first start, you're going to take some time building your scenario, right? It's going to take a little bit of time so that you can figure out what works for your org and what doesn't. Do we need 15 match steps like we've seen today? Or do we only need 6? Right? I will say this, a lot of times people try and make this real simple, make 4 or 5, and they miss a lot of data. They end up importing a lot of duplicates. So you want to be cautious when you start and really analyze what you see in this grid before you move forward with importing or updating. Okay. All right, any questions about that? The thought process, the analysis, the creation of match steps. All right, my friends, that is PeopleImport. So we didn't have very many questions. We have quite a bit of time left. If you've gotten everything you need out of today's training, please, please, please feel free to have the rest of your day back. I hope you're having a great week. I appreciate you joining me. I'm going to stick around for a few minutes, answer any questions that people might have, and move forward.